everybody, it's Courtney, and today I am creating a card using the Caroling Squad stamp set by Simon Hurley Create. And I'm starting off with a piece of Neenah Solar White 80-pound cardstock, and this is cut an inch smaller than an A2 size card. I'm going to start off with this little caroling guy here, and I'm going to go ahead and stamp him twice with Blackout ink by Ink on 3. I stamped him twice because the inside of his mouth is black and I wanted to get that as dark as I could. Next, I'm taking a piece of full stick Post-it note, and I'm going to go ahead and stamp him on that as well. And I'm just going to quickly cut out a mask. I'm not doing any ink blending, so it doesn't have to be perfect, but I like to cut my paper first to just a little bit larger than the image itself. And then I'm just going to cut along the black line. I'm cutting right on the black line, and I'm turning my paper with my left hand and pretty much keeping my scissors somewhat straight with my right. Now in this case, I didn't have to cut the whole mask because I'm only really needing to mask out the left hand side of him, but I just wanted to quickly show you the easiest way to cut masks. So I'm going to go ahead and mask him out, and then I'm going to take this large Christmas tree from the same stamp set, and I'm going to go ahead and position that off to the left hand side of him. And I did have to kind of move my paper around in my MISTI, so I am going to bring out my magnet just in case, and I'm going to go ahead and stamp this twice also. Now I must have had a couple cat hairs on this stamp along with every other stamp I own, because I had a little bit of I don't know what you'd call it, fuzziness looking in some of the areas, but usually once you color over it, you can't really tell. So I'm going to move on to the coloring. I'm first going to just ground my images, and I'm going to go back and fix this, but this is just to kind of lay out where my ground will be with some cool gray markers. Then I'm going to create an outline around all of my images with a B00 and a B000. Again, I'll go back and fix this later, but I recently watched a video from Renee from Delaney Jane Cards, and she actually did this kind of by accident to fix a mistake that she had, and it looked beautiful. I loved the blue outline and kind of like the blue reflection around everything. It was gorgeous. So I decided to copy a little bit and do this for my card as well. Instead of creating a whole background, this really makes your images pop. So I'm just going through and blending all of those areas out a little bit with that B000. Then I'll go ahead and move on to the coloring of the images themselves. So I'm going to start off with this little caroling guy here, and I'm just going to use my typical go-to combination for skin tones. You really can't see too much of his face, but I am going to add a little bit of shading to the base of both of his ears, on the base of his nose, I guess where his little nostrils are, and the bottom portion of his face where his chin would be, and just blend that out each and every time, leaving the very top portion of his face for that highlight color. For his pants, I'm just going to make these jeans because that's the easiest, and I love the B90s for jeans. Well, I lied. First, I colored his little tongue with a R22 and an R21 just to give a little shading, and I did end up taking my black Copic marker just to fill in the inside of his mouth, just to make sure that it was really completely black, and I didn't have those splotchy lines that sometimes photopolymer stamps can give you with a large image like that, or a large solid area. So for his jeans, I'm just going to concentrate on the center light source, not really too concerned. I'm just going to add a little bit of B99 to either side, and also where his shirt is hanging over his jeans. Blend that out with the B97, B95, and finish off with the B93 for that highlight color. Next, I'm going to move on to the Christmas tree itself, and I ended up using 5 different colors here. And I'm starting off with a fairly dark G marker, and I'm going right in with my darkest color because I don't care if I can still see some of my flick lines. That just adds texture to your image. So I'm starting off with that G29, which is super dark, and I'm just adding this to, I guess, where one section of the Christmas tree hangs over another, and just the, I guess you could call them peaks, peaks and valleys there. So I'm just adding them to the peaks, blending that out all the way with that G07. Then I'm going to bring in a YG17. Now the YG17 and the G07 will blend nicely together because they both end in 7. but this will kind of lighten everything up and give more of a yellow-green color, but still have that really scary dark color. Next, going to move on to the YG06 and blend this out almost to the very tips of each section of that Christmas tree. And then I will finish off with a YG01, which is very yellowy. It's more yellowy than green, but I'm just using that for the tips of each of the little branches of the tree. Next, I am going to move on to the tree trunk, and I wanted to keep this fairly light as well, so there's not going to be a whole lot of contrast here. Going to go right in with the darkest color, which is the E33, just on either side of the tree trunk, and blend that out with the E31, then finish off with that E30 just right there in the center. Now for his sweater, I wanted this to kind of be a golden yellow. And so I'm going right in again with my darkest color, that E99, and I'm just adding some shadows on either side of him. Also, there would be a little bit of a shadow where his scarf is hanging over his shirt. Going to blend that out a little bit further with the Y26, Y23, and leaving the highlight for the Y21. I did take that Y26, which is probably the most true to gold that I'm using here, and I'm just filling in the star solid. I'm not doing any shading here at all. Going to go ahead and color in his scarf with some reds, and I'm only using 3 here just because I didn't want to oversaturate the paper and risk them bleeding. So typically I use this combination, but I usually use an R24 as my lightest mid-tone, but I skipped that in this case just to play it safe. For his little sneakers and socks, I wanted these to appear white, so I'm just going to go in with some light C markers and just add a little bit of shading. Also going to fill in the bottom portion of that star with that C00 as well. Now here is where I loved the blue, but I needed to make it a little bit more intense. So this time I'm going to go in with those same 2 blue markers, but this time I'm going to bring in a B02, which is quite a bit darker, or brighter, I should say, for the bees. And I'm just going to outline everything. I'm not keeping a light source, so I don't care what side everything is on. And I'm just going to be being very careful now that everything is colored so I don't drag that color out. But I'm basically doing the same thing, going back in with that B00, and I'm going to extend this B02 out. I'm going directly over the B02 and just dragging it out a little bit further. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the B000, which is an extremely light blue. And this will kind of smooth everything out and give you a more of a seamless transition from the blue to the white paper. Just keep in mind that the lighter the color is, the more it will act as a colorless blender. So you just want to be careful not to go over any of your colored areas. Now I did add some shadows underneath the Christmas tree as well as underneath this little caroler, but I am off screen just a little bit. But I went in with the C7 just to kind of intensify those shadows, and I blended that out with the C5, C3, and finished off with the C1 just for the bottom portion of, I guess you could call it, the ground. So once all of my coloring was complete, we are going to go ahead and start assembling the card, I guess. For my background panel, which this is a 1/4 of an inch smaller than an A2 size card, I'm using the Piano Recital background stamp, also by Simon Hurley, and I'm going to be using the Woof ink, which is a kind of a warm gray ink. Just going to go ahead and ink up that stamp, and this stamp comes in 3 separate pieces, so you can use it as the full background or you can just use individual pieces. I want the entire background, so I'm going to lay my panel down flat down and just take a scrap piece of paper to kind of smooth that out so that I get a good impression over my entire panel. Next, I have 2 pieces of black cardstock. One is cut slightly larger than, actually they're both cut slightly larger than both of my panels. I also have a white A2 size note card there. I'm going to use the black hybrid ink by scrapbook.com to go ahead and stamp out a portion of my sentiment anyway, the portion of the sentiment that you can see right above my little caroler there. Then I will adhere everything together. I'll start off with my background and adhere that down to that black panel that's cut just a little bit larger, and this black panel is cut a little bit smaller than my card base so that I have a nice white outline or border around my card, or my main focus of the card anyway. Next, I am going to go ahead and adhere my colored panel, or my little scene here, onto another piece of black cardstock, and this is cut also just a tiny bit larger than my little panel or my scene here. So next I am going to stamp out the rest of my sentiment, and this sentiment is so cute. It's because most of us forget most of the words to most Christmas carols. I think we know the main parts, but we don't know them all. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp that out with that same hybrid ink onto a scrap piece of white cardstock. Bring out my paper trimmer, and I'm cutting this down into a very skinny little strip. Now this will be the little hidden message or hidden sentiment that we have on our card. So I'm going to pop up this panel here, this main panel, I guess you could say, with some Scotch foam tape. So I'm going to start layering this, and I'm going in the same direction each and every time just to make it a little bit easier for myself. And you'll see that once I get towards the bottom, I'm going to leave a little bit of a gap and bring back out that sentiment strip just to make sure I have barely enough room for that to slide in and out. I don't want to leave too much room in between my foam tape, but I want to make sure that there is enough room where this is going to easily slide back and forth. I also took a teeny tiny bit of Scotch foam tape to adhere to the one side so that it doesn't slide all the way through. So I only want it to be able to slide back and forth on the right hand side, but I don't want it to slip all the way through to the left. So I added a tiny little piece just as like kind of like a stopper, so it doesn't go any further than I want it to go. Went ahead and removed my foam tape here, and I will position this right in the center of my background here, and you'll see that this little sentiment strip here will slide nicely in and out, and you can cut this as short or as long as you want it to. I don't want it too long because I want this to be able to fit in an envelope. I did take an EK Success journaling pen just to write the word pull on there, just so that the recipient actually knows what to do with it. And then I am going to go ahead and finish off the card with some enamel accents just on the ornaments, or where the ornaments were, because I didn't bother to color those in. So that is it. That is the card for today. As always, I will leave the supplies listed in the description box below. I'll also leave a link to Renee's channel if you want to check her out. She's amazingly talented. She's fairly new to YouTube, but you definitely want to check her out. So thank you guys so much for stopping by today, and have a great day. Bye.